So you want to create a network graph in Power BI. Well, by the end of this video, I'll show you just how to do that. My name's Mitchell. I'm the founder of Secure Metrics, and I've helped over 800 companies transform their data into Power BI reports, visuals, and dashboards. And a big piece of that lately has been network graphs. And if you're watching this video, you might have realized there's not a way out of the box in Power BI to get graphs, but don't worry. By the end of this video, I'll show you how to take your data, transform it into the right format, load it into Power BI, and then build interactive network graphs right in the reports. And these can be really large graphs as well, up to 1 million edges in size. So let's get started by first taking a look at some data. Throughout this tutorial, I'm going to be using some sample data. Now, what's interesting about this is we don't necessarily have to have graph formatted data. And what I mean by that is data that has a node and an edge list. If you don't know what that means, don't even worry about it. But let's take a look. I have some sales data here as an example. Let's open it up in Excel. This is a CSV file. And if we take a look, looks like your typical sales kind of spreadsheet. We have order numbers here, we have quantity, we have what is the price, what is the order line number, sales dollars, order date, status, all kinds of normal stuff. So this might be some of your typical sales data that you'll see. Let's go ahead and open Power BI. Take a look at our data here. I've done no transformations. I just get data from CSV. But you'll likely have this data in your Power BI environment, however that comes, whether you're connecting to a database, pulling in CSV files like I have here, or some other connector. Now, what we want to do is there are no graph visuals out of the box. There are some things that are sort of similar where we can show how things are moving between things. But what we'll need to do is actually get more visuals. So you'll see we click these three dots, we click get more visuals, and that will open up App Source for us here. We can search for network here, and there are some options here. What I will actually be using is Astra. And Astra is awesome because it lets us do large-scale graph networks. We can do up to about 1 million edges in size for the graph. The nodes will depend, really, it's scaled on how many edges. But all we're going to do here is click Add, and we will now have that as a new visual option here. Let's go ahead, pull this onto our canvas, and we're going to get started building our graph. Now, graphs are in node and edge format. And what I mean by that is if you think about kind of how a network graph is shown, we have dots, which are our nodes, and then we have our lines, which are edges, and those are more the relationships. In Power BI's context, each row of our table is essentially a relationship. And in this case, our sales data, right, each one is a sale. And so we can then create network graphs and visualize how the different pieces of a sale are interconnected. So there's lots of options we could do here, but let's, for example, do customer name, and product code. And now we see something's here, but we can't really tell what's going on here. Let's go ahead and go to the visual formatting options. Let's go to simulation, and let's bump up this link distance. What this does is spreads out or elongates the edges so we can see them a little bit more. Let's bump this up to 15 maybe. And now we can see this a lot easier, right? We could also increase the repulsion force a little bit, maybe 0.5. And that might help us get a better view as well. Now, these are not super helpful. Let's go back to the label settings here. Let's turn off dynamic labels, but keep hovered labels on. So that when we hover over, we can see this is the product code, and this is the customer. It's kind of hard to tell, though, without hovering over and knowing, is Online Mini Collectibles a customer name or a product code? So let's actually differentiate the node color by what the node type is. But to do that, we're going to have to create some new data. Let's go ahead and go transform data. And let me note here, our customer is our source, our product is our target. So let's click transform data and do this in Power Query. You could also do this in DAX. But let's create a column, custom column. Let's just call this source node type. And we said the source nodes are customers. And we'll create that. And then we'll make one for the target node type. And we said those are products. We'll create that, close and apply. We'll let it load that data into our data model. And now here in source color and target color, we can pull that in. So we have target color and we have source color. Here it is. And now you see we're actually differentiating them, and we have a legend here as well. I can actually click on this if I just want to highlight the products or just the customers. And let's actually change the colors here. We'll go to node settings. For this first category, we'll make that, I don't know, purple. And then the second one, maybe blue. Sounds fun. All right. The other thing we can do is put on select adjacent nodes. And what this will do is when we click on a node to select it, it'll select all the nodes that are directly connected to that node. If I turn that off, for example, and select a node, it'll only select that singular node. But select adjacent nodes seems useful where we can, click on a customer and see all the products that they've purchased. The other thing we could potentially do is in our edge settings, we could change the link color. So maybe I want that to be, what would be a good color? Pink, maybe? We could change the curved, so we can make these edges curved if we'd like. We can also change the curve, right? So maybe it's 0.5 weight. The distance is 0.2. I think I'll just keep them straight. And then we could also turn the legend off if we wanted to. But I still think that's beneficial, right, on being able to differentiate between customers and products. So even with just this, right, we have a pretty useful visualization where we can say, look at what products customers have purchased. We could also change the edge color based off something in our data. So that might be interesting, the link color here. Maybe it is a territory. Let's take a look and see what territory is looking like in our data. Is there any other options here? Yeah, okay, so that might be interesting, right? Where edges are showing, hey, was this deal in APAC, EMEA, Japan, or North America? That might be interesting. Let's see what happens. So let me pull territory into the link color. And now we actually have some more options here in the legend, right? We have what are our nodes and what are our links. Let's change some of the colors here. Edge settings. Let's make this red. Let's make this yellow, which it already kind of was, and orange. So this is a pretty ugly, ugly graph. You can do some better job maybe with the color theory than I can. Let's also bump up the link width here. That way we can see the links a little bit better. I don't want them to be too strong. We can also, so you'll notice there are some arrows to show us what's the direction, right? This customer is purchasing a product. We can turn those off to make a more traditional kind of undirected graph. But I do think having the arrows makes sense in this context since the customer is purchasing the product's not in return purchasing the customer. So that's pretty useful, right? But what's really interesting about having these in Power BI is we can create and put these into our dashboards and actually have them cross-filter with other stuff, right? The first example that might be pretty straightforward is let's take a slicer and I'll put this right here. And maybe we actually want to, we could slice, right, our links like this, boom, and we're just choosing those links. Maybe actually state might be interesting. So let's take slicer. Let's put our state on there, and I'm going to do a drop down. And we'll select all states. Um, there we go. That should be everything. Um, so let's say I just want to look at Quebec. I can actually slice this graph based off of that, right? So Quebec Home Shopping Networks are only customer making purchases out of Quebec. I could also add in Quebec and Queensland, and we have Australian Gift Network out of Queensland. Um, so we can do that. We can also, let's just take maybe, some sort of bar chart, and let's pull in x-axis is maybe deal size, y-axis is maybe customer name, right? So we're looking at our deal size by customers. And I can actually cross-filter here based on the other graphs. And we can also do that the opposite way as well, right? So maybe I want to look at Signal gift stores. I can filter that. And vice versa. So this is a pretty simple example, but this is taking a really simple, straightforward, kind of your traditional sales data table, and turning it into a really interesting network graph. And we can scale this up. There isn't a ton of sales data in here, but you can have up to, a little over 1 million edges in this graph. But the really interesting thing is we can cross-filter, right, and build really powerful graph tools right in Power BI, just like you're used to, and just like all your users are used to using in their business intelligence tools. So I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments. And I'd love to see all the cool graphs that you guys make.